Hey, everybody, welcome back to the No Reservations podcast. This is episode number 39, titled Teamwork Triumphs, but it's going to be a little bit more than that. It's going to be about teamwork, but also about culture, collaboration, all the things when it comes to running, I was going to say a tight ship. That's true, but also a fun, collaborative, forward thinking, guest centered, hospitality driven, internal employee culture. That was a mouthful, but that's kind of all the things that we're going to touch on, that I'm going to touch on. I'm here alone today on this podcast. And it is crucially important. I probably don't need to tell you that, how incredibly important it is to have a great team working with you in your business. And that's true across certainly any industry. I would say it is essential in the hospitality and certainly in the restaurant industry. And probably for more reasons than you think. I mean, obviously you could say, oh yeah, it's cool when we have a staff that we like and everyone gets along and therefore we can provide good service and, enjoy our work. That's barely scratching the surface. There's so much more that goes into that. And it doesn't happen by luck. And I feel like I used to think that was true. And that could have been naivety when I had my restaurants years ago, just being, somewhat young in the industry and not knowing any different. But looking back, and based off of everything that I have learned and all of the research and kind of, I'm trying to think of the word, like, I want to say camps, but really just like courses that I've taken on culture and collaboration and teamwork, I have learned a bunch, not a ton. I've learned a bunch about it. And here's what I do know. It doesn't happen by accident or luck of the draw. It happens certainly by design, and it's certainly not a set it and forget it type thing in your business. It is just like I always talk about the restaurant industry being this living, breathing entity, unlike so many other businesses where you can literally close, lock the door, and let it go until you're back in the next day. With a restaurant, that's rarely true. It is constantly moving. It's a living, breathing thing. And I would say the exact same is true when we're talking about your team, your employee culture. It is a living, breathing thing. It needs to constantly be monitored, adapted, loved on, breathed into. It's a lot. It is a lot. I will say that. And when I say that, I feel like some of you might just think like, oh, like I need one more thing to work on, right? You've got enough going on. You're going in a million directions as it is. You got 1,000 fish to fry. How on earth are you going to, add one more thing? But here's the thing. If you can prioritize this a little bit more than some other things, if you can, and I think you kind of have to, if and when you prioritize this part of your business, working in and on the collaboration and the teamwork, it will address so many of the other issues in your business that may not even become issues because you'll just have this A-player 5-star team to work with. So I would highly, highly recommend you put this at the forefront. And there are some pretty simple ways to do this. And I'm going to get to those in a little bit on this episode. Pretty simple ways just to kind of plug in, stay in tune as much as with your team, with your staff. And if you can do that and work on that, and literally in my head, I'm kind of picturing like building a fire and just keep, stoking the fire a little bit and loving on this energy that you can create and you should create in your business. It will solve for so many other issues that you might not have to deal with. So that's how important I think this is. And the one thing I wanted to start with, like I said, is it doesn't just happen because you got really lucky in your hiring, although hiring is part of it. And it doesn't happen because you just, you have a staff that's been around for a while and, they know the drill and, when they're all in good moods, it works. No, there's a lot more that goes into this. And let's dive in. Also, I wanted to say, if the phone rings, my apologies, I'm not going to answer it. I normally do not keep an office phone up here in my office because I am usually recording and whatnot, but I had to take a call earlier and I didn't bring the phone back downstairs to the team. And so, and I already started recording this and I didn't want to stop it. So if it rings, just ignore it. My apologies. Anyway. Okay. So what's up? Why collaboration matters? All right. We're going to touch on just a couple of things. One, the reality of turnover in any business is it costs you a lot of money, hidden money that you don't realize is costing you, but it costs you a lot of money. A simple way to kind of look at it, and it doesn't matter how you run your training system in your business, but the thing is, if you are constantly turning over staff and therefore needing to bring in new people, one, you have the time, energy, vibe, and possibly money going into the recruitment part, into creating the ad, placing the ad, then going through, resumes, applications, then meeting with them. It depends what your hiring gauntlet looks like. And I know I have a whole other episode on the gauntlet, which I think is important, but at some point you have to place an ad. You got to collect resumes or applications. You got to meet with people before you hire them, right? Not to mention the onboarding part, all of that costs money. And while it might not be dollar for dollar changing hands, that is time away from all the other things you could be doing in your restaurant that make you money. So it costs you, whether you think it does it or not, it costs you. So that's not to mention you bring someone in, they have to shadow somebody for a day or two at least, right? Now you're paying two people to do the same job. That's real money right there. So I think that a lot of employers underestimate the true cost of turnover and what it costs you to constantly be bringing on new people. So if we can create a culture with intention, a culture that speaks to you, that speaks to your staff, that makes everyone feel involved, you will certainly tamper down that turnover, and that's money in your pocket guaranteed. How poor teamwork shows up in the guest experience. Yeah, I mean, I don't really need to talk too much about that. Obviously it does. If somebody isn't loving their job and it's really hard to hide that vibe, it's absolutely going to spill over to the guest experience, and that guest experience is not going to be phenomenal. Let's face it. It's just not. I don't care how professional that person is. So there's that, and that could cost you money right there because the guests may or may not come back, or may not come back as often. And then there is a definite link between culture and the bottom line for all the reasons I just said and more. Businesses that have a tremendous culture, or just a culture to be spoken of that's positive in any light, just have a much bigger bottom line than ones that don't. That's a no-brainer. It's a given. It's a fact. Okay, moving on. I want to talk about 3 core elements of a collaborative culture. So just 3 core elements I want you to take away with you today and see if it helps as you're thinking about your culture. So number 1, you need to have clear leadership and expectations. So here's something that I mean by that. If you do any type of studying or research when it comes to teamwork and leadership, et cetera, one of the things that you'll hear a lot of is you're inviting your employees into a story. That's the first step in engaging them into your culture, into your business, into becoming a successful member of your culture, and produce what you need to be produced for your business to survive, thrive, and grow. So you're inviting them into a story. And if you keep that in your mind, if you're thinking, okay, what story, as I've hired people, you can even go back and think of, okay, who's everyone that's on my team right now? If I ask them, what story do you think you're involved in right now? What would they say? Just kind of guess. You don't have to ask them. You could, but you don't have to. But as you bring on future new employees, just keep that in mind. What story am I inviting them into? And that story is where you can get really clear on how you lead, the leadership within your business, and what your expectations are. If your expectations are, for example, we understand that life happens, that everybody has good days and bad days. That is just part of the human experience. We get that. But when our employees show up here and wear our uniform or our apron or whatever, and they're here and they're on the clock or even off the clock, but you know what I mean? It's a good day. We're going to make it a good day. We leave our bummers at the door and everyone's having a good day when you're here. That's an expectation that you set from day one. It completely shifts everybody's mindset coming in, because there are so many other businesses that aren't doing that aren't setting that expectation. You would like to think that that would be a given, right? Well, you're in the hospitality. Hopefully you're not going to show up and be a jerk, right? Hopefully you're going to show up and plaster a fake smile on your face if you have to. It's not a given, because I mean, if you've been out to other restaurants, I'm sure you've experienced people who weren't having the best day, and you should not have to experience that. This is a hospitality business. So setting clear leadership and expectations, whatever your expectations are for a 5-star employee in any role in your business, set that from the gate and reinforce it constantly. So if you're saying, well, I already have my team and I'm, maybe you might hire one more person, but that's, not enough. So that ship has sailed. No, you can start it right now. You could start it in an hour. You could start it today. You could start it tomorrow. Just start it and then reinforce that leadership and the expectations that you have of every single person that works for you. The second element, and this is a big one, again, if you do any type of reading on this topic, you'll most likely come across this, which is psychological safety. And this is not a new thing. I just feel like it's talked about new, but it's very, very real. So this is not some buzzword, some trendy thing that's, all the influencers are talking about, or maybe they are talking about it. I don't really know. I just did some research on it. I studied up on it a little bit. I heard some people talk on it, but it is a real thing that people are just bringing to light. So psychological safety is to make sure that every single one of your employees feels psychologically safe, meaning if they have a question, if they have feedback, that they feel they wouldn't hesitate to bring it up. That's safety. Because if they're not hesitating, meaning they feel safe, and they're also they're tied in, right? They're plugged into your business. So if they have questions and they have comments and they have feedback, the generous assumption is it's because they care, and you don't want to stifle that at all. So, and the opposite of that is also true. If they have some negative things to say, if they want to speak up and cry and whine, you want to know that, because if that's never going to get better, that's not the right person on your team anyway, and you want to get them out the door as soon as possible. So by creating an environment where everybody feels psychologically safe to speak up and ask questions appropriately, of course, when they need to, that's the environment you want. So you should set that example from the beginning, and then just like leadership and expectations, you want to reinforce that regularly so that everybody feels safe in speaking up and talking in an appropriate way. And of course, if it's not appropriate, that might not be the right for you. So psychological safety is huge. And actually, I wrote about a manager in my book, Profit First for Restaurants. As a manager I had at the Chart House. He sort of changed everything for me, because I think all of the other managers I've ever had, and I had a bunch up to, by that point, were the opposite of him, where I always felt scared to ask questions. So this is when I was in my late teens, early 20s, working at, a bunch of different restaurants and bars. Overall, usually the manager or a manager was having a bad day, or just was just a bad mood person. And I felt very nervous about asking questions, offering up feedback of any kind. And it was just a horrible environment. Who wants to be in that environment? And I actually thought that was old school restaurant thinking, but I was wrong. My son took a job at a small little bistro when he was going to UNH last semester, actually. And while he was training, I think he trained for 2 or 3 days, 2 or 3 shifts. And it was great. Everybody was super happy, super nice. And they said, hey, here you go. Here's what you do. If you have any questions, just come and find me. I got you, right? And he's like, great, this is great. And then I think by his 4th shift, and he was now on his own, he was the host, and it was a busy Saturday afternoon lunch. He went to find the manager to ask a question on something he wasn't trained in, and he had his head bitten off. And I remember because he called me after the shift saying like, I think they hate me. I'm like, oh my God, why would you say that? He said, I just went to ask a question on something that I had no idea about. And the manager was like furious and snapped at me. And then it happened again on his next shift for a different question. So he at that point, he checked out, right? He completely checked out. So you want people to feel safe. There's no, I mean, I can't even think of a reason why you wouldn't want people to feel safe. You want people to feel safe, and you have to, you, the owner, the manager, have to create that environment where they do. And then the third core element is peer accountability. Foster pride and ownership across roles. So if you can't, and I know that you can't, and I don't know what it will look like for you in your business. I think it really depends. It's very unique to every business. But peer accountability, because if you can get buy-in from a few of your employees, they're the ones that will go and get the buy-in from everybody else. And you just make them accountable to one another. So however you can bring in and foster peer accountability, that will create a level of pride, ownership. And yes, you do want everyone to feel like, you want them to feel like an owner. Not in the way that they get to give away free shit to everybody. I'm not saying that at all, but you want them to feel pride and ownership so that their station in the kitchen or their service station upstairs or their tables are always maintained how they would maintain them if they were the owner. So you always want people to feel pride and ownership. And that usually it can start from the owner or their head trainer, but then it will come from their peers who they're working alongside. So you need to have that peer accountability built into your business to keep that up. Okay. The next section, tools and tactics. So here's a couple of tools, a few tactics you can use to help build team unity in your restaurant. So as I've talked about before, pre-shift huddles with intention. So we have a free downloadable tool that you can use, and it is on the website with all of our other tools. So the profitfirstforrestaurants.com website /tools, or you can just find the tools button. One of them is a pre-shift, pre-service huddle template download. That's one. There are many different ones you can use. You can edit it, and you can even just Google your own, and I know that Google will come up with some. I just put one together that was one of my favorites to use. But the fact that you have something, a guide, that's what this template's for, a guide, so that when you have a huddle, and please tell me that you have pre-service, pre-shift huddles. These are crucial. And it's not even just my opinion. I hear this in every single restaurant that we work with. I hear it from the ones that don't do it. I'm like, yeah, we don't do that, but we really should. And they're the ones that kind of all share the same issues versus the ones that say, oh yeah, like our pre-shift huddles are great. Or, oh, we had to miss one day and it sucks. So we really are going to, make more of a priority of those. It's really, really, really important to have that. Not just for the basic reasons of tell them the specials, tell them what's 86, talk about the reservation counter, any VIPs or whatever, but just it's that tie-in, that bind to the team. It gives them something to count on. And if you have that psychological safety, it gives them a forum where they can speak up. So pre-shift huddles, so important, and they should be done intentional, not like, all right, guys, let's get together. Here are the specials. Anything else? All right, bye. Like, no, have a theme. Put some love, put some intention, some thought into them, and that will go miles. They will notice that you're doing that, and it'll mean a lot. Oh, that's what I meant by the phone ringing. Sorry about that. Okay. Cross-training to promote empathy and adaptability. I love cross-training. I know I spoke about this recently. In the restaurants I worked in, no matter what position you were applying for, during your training, you worked at least one shift in every single position in the restaurant. I stand by that. I think it is the best way to get somebody acclimated with your business. That way they get to meet everybody. They get to find out where everything is. And then they have a new appreciation for what everyone does and how you work as a team. So cross-training to me is a no-brainer. I don't understand why people don't make it work. And even if you can't do it in every single position, although I was able to do that, and I just think that was such a win, have them do it at least in a handful of positions. As many as you can, it goes a long way, and it also shows the dedication of the person that you're bringing on. So that just doing that is just not just a win-win for everyone, but it also promotes empathy and adaptability of the person that you're hiring. So it's a big deal, and it is a great tactic to use in terms of building team unity. A third thing is certainly recognition, and this can be built into your pre-shift huddle, whether you formally build it in or you just do it without it being formal, so it looks like it's just natural, but you should do a shout out. And maybe it's a shout out from the management, or maybe you have the team get together and say, hey, who do we want to shout out today for any reason? Who had a great shift last night? Who closed great? Who had a great week last week? However you want to do it as a shout out, just someone hearing their name called out for something good goes a long way. That can also be done in the form of contests, shared wins, or whatever, but I do like personalized shout outs that are not forced, that are natural. Easy tools that you could use, although, one of them is group chats. These can also go in the wrong direction. So I'm not a huge fan of them, but I do know that a lot of restaurants communicate through group texting chats now. So there is that. You might want to have those monitored in some way, shape, or form, so you don't have, a poison go into one and create all kinds of problems. But again, if you are creating this deliberate culture, collaborative culture that shouldn't happen, I wouldn't want to create a space for it to happen. There's not really shared documents involved here, but team check-ins. You could pull your waitstaff team together, your front of the house team together, your kitchen staff together, your porters together, however you do, even if it's just a small group, even if it's 2 of you and the manager. Team check-ins with people who do like work could really go a long way. Some high fives there, some acknowledgement of the work that they do. All of this goes a long way, and all of this builds into a culture that you want to be proud of, that you will be proud of, that will pay you back in spades. So you do all these things, right? You do all or some of these things and more. I certainly haven't touched on everything, but you will get tangible results. You will have higher morale. You will have smoother services with happy clients, happy customers, and better reviews. And people want to come back again because they want to feel what they felt the time they were in there, when everybody was just jiving and having a great time and tripping over themselves to deliver an amazing hospitality. And that's what we want to do when we build a culture. So there's not a template. There's not, here's your culture in a box, check these off and you'll be fine. That's a good thing. You develop your culture. It's on you, and it's about you, and it's how you want your team to feel and how you want your customers to feel, and the priorities that are important to you that come across to the people in your orbit. You get to build this. But again, it's not a set it and forget it, and it doesn't happen by accident, because if it does, it's out of your control. So be deliberate, be intentional, be thoughtful, involve your team, and constantly breathe life into your culture, and it will pay you back. It will be the best time investment that you've ever made. Okay, so here are the takeaways as I wrap this up. Team culture affects everything from turnover to tip totals, you name it. Your vibe and energy, it affects everything. Leadership and structure make or break a collaboration, make or break your business. It is so important to have strong leadership and a structure built around it. Takeaway 3, you don't need a big budget, if any. You just need to be deliberate and intentional and thoughtful and giving of your time and your energy, and really your intention, one-on-one, one on a group, one on your entire team. And that's it. That is it. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I wanted to let you know that our next shift episode, and that is when I interview a restaurateur that has implemented the Proper First system. You're going to hear from Cara of Kaylee's Kitchenette out in California, and she and her husband are killing it out there, where a lot of other restaurants are really struggling. They are just thriving, and she has a lot to say about catering, restaurants, profit first, you name it. So stay tuned for the shift on the next episode. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you soon.